Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Chris, also Tarmack. You've seen me before. You've also seen Isaac before if you're watching this one. This is a little bit down the road on our dev blog series for Sovereign Syndicate, Crimson Herring Studios. My apologies. We talked a little bit about Isaac. We talked a little bit about kind of what the project is, and now we want to talk a bit more about kind of how some of the early decisions were made, how the project got started, how it got off the ground. We know you're not a game developer, but you kind of want to be. So you've mentioned that in private to me that you're using Unity. So why Unity? What are you going to get from that? What's the reason for that decision?
Well, I did some research into, first of all the games that we've talked about, right? Disco Elysium and Shadowrun are both made in Unity. Wasteland 3, anyway, is made in Unreal, Epic's engine. It seems to me that in the developer community, that if you're going to use a pre-built engine, I think that studios that are a little bit more advanced will tend to build their own engines. But I think if you're an indie developer, most of the time, the products are coming out either on Unreal or on Unity. Unity, I guess, has the reputation of being the more indie one, being more approachable, being easier to use. And because it was the one that was used to make Disco Elysium and Shadowrun that are big inspirations for this game, that was really where I first looked. I also thought initially that I might want to do some of the coding myself. I think I eventually decided against that because it would be a longer learning curve. I would have more work to do. I thought it was probably just more efficient to hire somebody for it. But yeah, that's really why I chose Unity. Was it just seemed to be what the community was telling me.
Okay. So on the topic of having to or wanting to hire a programmer, same situation with art. I know that you do some writing. I mean, not everybody's a published artist, so you've got some skill there. But how are you going to deal with the hurdle of getting a hold of a programmer and an artist, or multiples of both? We've talked about Fiverr. We've talked a little bit about some of this outsourcing, but how are you doing it? How are you finding these people? How are you vetting them? How are you paying them?
Yeah, that's fair, right? All good questions. So, like I said, I really tried to focus on recruiting the right people from the right channels, and I learned from my failures. I tried to find writers, had some difficulty, had some failures. Ended up finding a guy that I really liked. Maybe we can go back to what your question was.
It was more, how are you dealing with the hurdle of getting a hold of these people? How are you trying to? How are you going to bring them on board? How are you going to check their work? Where are you finding them? Like if I'm an indie developer and I can do all the programming, but I don't know my ass from a hole in the ground where it comes to doing artwork or making 3D models, how do I find that person? Like where are you looking? Where are you trying to find these?
Sure. So I think I used Fiverr for writing. I used ArtStation for art after failing using Fiverr for art. I didn't find anybody very good. But I'll say that really, it's funny. I make this joke sometimes to my wife, and she hates it when I say it. I feel like finding freelancers was like being on a dating site. Being on Tinder, being on Match. You, as a guy, I mean, right? It's my experience. You send messages until somebody responds. So you look at profile after profile after profile of artists that are on ArtStation. You look for profiles where they have things in their portfolio posted that you like, right? They have pictures of work that they've done that you like or that you think would be very applicable to the type of game that you're doing. And you send them a message and you say, hey, right, here's who I am and here's the type of game that I'm trying to make. Are you interested in any freelance work? And I was sending out between 2 and 5 of those a day to between 2 and 5 artists. And then I kept doing that until I got a response. And quite often I would get no response, or I would get a response that said, thanks, but I'm not looking for freelance work right now. I'm currently working at a studio. Or, sure I can, but here's my rate. And sometimes that rate was unaffordable. So I just kept doing that until I got somebody who did work that I really liked, that was willing to work for the price I was willing to pay, and that was available to do it. And I think in all reality, I probably sent messages to between 50 and 100 artists before I got one concept artist that is now involved with the project whose work I like.
It does sound like what I've heard Tinder is like. I haven't used it myself, but it sounds pretty accurate. We'll go into some depth on the funding side a little bit, in probably in a future video. But do you have anybody that's investing in this yet, or is that's a future goal? Like, what's sort of the high plan for how you're going to fund all of this?
Right now it's all my money. So I structure my life in such a way that I have additional income left over at the end of the month. I tend to live very humbly, right? I try not to get a house that's bigger than I need or a car that's nicer or newer than I need. And you're right, I make a good income. I have a good job. I did have a used sports car for a while, you know that. And so I actually sold that to help fund this project. So that's my summer car that I gave up.
I was going to say a house bigger than you needed, a car nicer and newer than you need. I feel a little attacked. I get you there. Okay.
Yeah, right. So I structured my life in such a way that I again, being intentional, if I want to do this, I need to have money to do it, right? Nobody's going to do it for free. And you talked about attracting outside investors. I don't even want to approach outside investors until I have something to show. I looked a little bit into what angel investors or publishers or crowdfunding, what their recommended approach was. And all of the guides said, make sure you have a playable demo first. So that's been my goal, is use my own funding to get to a playable demo and then use that to pursue other funding.
Okay. You sound really driven for all of this. I've always been the kind that thinks too much. I have to figure out where all the possible pitfalls are beforehand. And for me, that causes a problem, because then sometimes I just don't get stuff done. So that old adage of analysis paralysis, how are you making it through all of this in an industry that you've never been in before? You've enjoyed the products, you've done some playing, but how are you being comfortable making these decisions like this and just going for it?
I've like I say, in the last few years, I've really tried to reassess my life and some of the decisions that I've made, and we've known each other for a long time. And I'll say that this isn't the first idea like this that either of us has had. And certainly now we're more settled in our lives and we have better jobs and have more money available to pursue a lot of these projects. I think in the past, some of our problem was we were poor and we wanted to get not poor. So we were trying to think of a way outside of our jobs to make additional money so that we could not be poor. But now that we're a little bit more settled, we have more money. I do have some money set aside for the project. And I think that's helped me get over the hump with some of this, is I can just throw some money at it. But I think two things that I've really learned about getting things done is be persistent, or maybe three things: be persistent, be intentional, and get comfortable being uncomfortable, right? Just do the thing that you think is going to lead to being successful. It's like asking out a girl. If you don't ever ask out a girl, chances that she's going to go out with you are pretty small. You got to sort of get over the hump and ask to have any chance of going out with her, right? That's just sort of how it is. So this has been the same, right? I'm never going to have an artist unless I ask this artist if he wants to work on the job. And if he says no, okay, on to the next one, right? Approaching the CEO of Harebrained Schemes was sort of intimidating, but it was very much like that, right? He's the CEO of a multi-million-dollar game studio, and I'm, in the industry, I'm nobody. But I found him on LinkedIn and I sent him a message and I said, hey, right, I'm interested in licensing the game and licensing the engine. Is that something you want to talk about? And to my surprise, he got back to me right away. And okay, he answered no. But if I hadn't asked, I wouldn't have known.
Yeah, no, that's, absolutely valuable information to have. I've been around the game industry for a little bit, some as far as making videos and doing reviews and all of these sorts of things. So it's just really interesting to watch you go through all of this and hear the mistakes that you're making, not because I know any better, not because I have some crystal ball that says, no, that's stupid, don't do that. But more just watching the persistence, watching you keep going, has been really, really good. So I think we'll close this one up here, and just keep tuning in. We'll keep talking to you about how this game is being made. Keep these dev blogs going because it is interesting. It's always a pleasure. And we'll chat for the next one.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Take care.